I'd like to welcome you to Platypus, Scotsman. Glad you could join me. And this is a tutorial to wrap up several other tutorials. The obelisks, the drums, the altar. I think that's it. Yeah. And then we make the banners in this one and feathers and kind of bring everything together. Some of the ones I've already done, so I'm not going to cover again, like painting ropes and things like that. I've already done that in the obelisk tutorial. But anyway, this is going to wrap it all together, put it all in one base. That was the original intent, so we'll get to that. And oh, before I do, if you want to see pictures of this and other tutorials that we've done, go over to our Instagram and check us out there. We post pictures there of the things we've done. You can see them longer than you can see them here, and possibly more pictures of them. Anyway, let's go. So I've already made one feather as an example, but I need to make a bunch of feathers for this project to tie it all together. So I've just got some sheet styrene. I think it's like 0.05 mil or 0.5 mil, or I can't remember. I'm just going to cut it. And this is thin enough. Once you score it once, you can kind of gently just snap it. Now, one thing I don't want is I don't want sharp edges. So you can do it one of two ways. You can just kind of snip it off and with the X-Acto knife, or you can get a little piece of sandpaper and sand it to round it out. Now I want to make the spine a little bit thicker. The reason why is just so I have a better guide. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take a really sharp brand new X-Acto blade. Now you don't have to do this if you don't want to. You can just paint the illusion in. But I'm going to scrape part of this out. Now I won't lie, it's easier under my magnifying glass. Now it's kind of sloped in a little bit like that because I don't care if the edge, I want a line for that when I go to paint it. I'm going to take the back side of my blade. I'm just going to come along and do this. Now I start at the bottom because that's kind of where I got the line or the angle that I want, and then I'll just work my way to the top. And one thing when you draw a feather, at least this feather that I'm doing, the spine is going to be closer to this outer edge, like this one. It's going to be closer to the outer edge than it is the inner edge. Just look at feathers. There's several different ways to do it. And I've created feathers like this for a long time. I started doing them on my Eldar years ago, and then I stopped. I don't know why. Now this is just a personal preference of mine. One of the things I want to do is, see how this is frayed on the edge right here? I want that to be frayed, and I'll go to the other, I'll flip it over and do it on the other side too. And this is the side that's going to be showing. Now, sometimes you'll do them, both sides will be showing, so you have to do this to both sides. But on the other side, I don't have to be as critical. I just want to get the edges, because it's going to be up against a banner. But I don't want this to be a crisp edge on the outside. You can take an X-Acto knife and shave it down, but this does the same thing if you do it on both sides. You're just stretching the plastic at the end. I'm not using the sharp side because I'm more interested in scoring the feather than I am cutting the feather. Now, one thing I like to do just to further give the impression that's a feather is now I'm using the sharp side of the blade, and I'm just going to cut a nick out of it here and there. Not a lot. I know you can have perfect feathers and they won't have the nicks, but this drives the impression that this is a feather home more. So also be careful not, I almost did one of the nicks here, but then that weakens this part of the spine. I've done that before and that spine ends up snapping. So try to offset them so you're not compromising the integrity of the feather. I cut a base out of some masonite and beveled the edges with a file. And this is for the whole entire piece to come together. And this part right here is underneath the main platform. And once it's all in, I really can't get to it, so I'm going to paint it brown right now. And this is just Sculptamold, which I will mix some later and show. It's like paper mache, not paper mache. Plaster Paris, not plaster Paris. Paper mache. What the heck? And since I can't get to this later on, I'm just going to paint it dark brown now. And this is burnt umber. I got some bits and cut the weapons off and just shaved these down a little bit so they're points. And then what I went and did is I got a drill and I drilled these in to where they're stripping down, and then I kind of notched this a little bit with the file. Just did that, and then cut this, kind of guessed a little bit, and then notched it up here as well. It's mostly eyeballing it to see if it's centered, and then straight up and down, and then I'll glue the weapons on. I have a hole in the top, and I'm just going to kind of have to do it as I go, just to make everything so make sure it's kind of lined up, stripping down as best as possible. I could actually lay it on here, but then I wouldn't know if it's this way too. Actually, it would. I could do it here too. So what I want to do first is I want to glue these weapons in. I want to glue them pointed towards each other. Glued some rings on that I got in a hobby store. When I say hobby store, I mean craft store, in their jewelry section. And now I'm just doing it to rope or twine, and I'm just going to wrap it around. Want my glue ready. So I've mixed some more Sculptamold, and I've glued the obelisk down and some stakes for rope. And I'm just gonna apply Sculptamold here and there just to make the ground not even. Now that everything's all dry, I'm gonna paint some burnt umber over all the ground, and I don't want to move the brush fast because I don't want it to flick up on everything I've painted. So when I get near things, I'm just going to kind of go slow, take my time. All right, I'm going to do a couple things. One is just to glue the feathers onto a scrap piece of plastic. I'm going to use some super glue. I just kind of already have them lined out how I kind of want them a little bit. I cut a banner out of some cardstock. Well, it's not quite cardstock. Well, maybe it is. It's a little bit thicker paper, but now I'm just going to kind of rough the edges. Not with that tool. Let's do this one. This is just white PVA glue. And I'm gonna mix some water with it. And grab me a crappy brush. Usually I don't use cardstock, but I'm just trying to see if this, for what I'm doing, usually I just use computer paper. So this is a first time for me to see how this stuff responds. If I don't like it, then I'll use paper. I'm going to give it a little bit of assistance and use some tacky glue up here. All right, I'm going to do the same to the larger banner and go from there. I have some dark burnt umber. I'm going to start painting the sticks or the logs. Just going to start out really dark. All right, I'm going to start dry brushing some iron oxide just to bring it up a little bit before I start throwing grays on it. Add a little bit of color back into it. I'm just going to do some hippo gray now and try to hit the wood only. I mean, I'm not going to be able to do that perfectly, but that way I don't have to go back and fix a lot of the rope. I'm just starting to bring it up is all I'm doing. Just going to do it lighter and lighter like it's been out in the sun for a little while. Been bleached a little bit. Going to move up a color now to cabinet gray. Just a lighter gray is all it is. I'm going to use a narrower brush so I can have a little bit more control and try to only hit the highlights or the wood. I'm going to paint this Averland Sunset. It's a really good base coat for yellow, at least I think so. It was referred to me by someone. I don't remember who now. Also the ropes and the metal, I'm going to refer you back to the Obelisk tutorial and just follow those. I did metal and ropes in that, and that's essentially what I'm doing on this. I just realized I'm going to be doing washes and various things on this that could actually bleed onto this, the canvas. So I'm going to do the skull first and just paint it khaki. All right, well, that one's dry. I'm going to paint this khaki. It's probably going to have at least 2 coats, so we'll just do that. Paint a couple coats on this bad boy. So I'm going to do a sepia wash on this now, or a shade, or what have you. I'm going to do a sepia wash on this skull, and I might do a couple of them, depends how dark the first one gets it. So what I'm going to do now is while that's drying, I'm going to dry brush yellow on this. I'm going to start applying a yellow shade to this and just kind of control a little bit. It's more of a stain, I would say. So I'm going to apply some, and then as it starts to dry, I'm going to remove some too. And then I'm going to have very little on my brush and just kind of bring it down through here and kind of stain it a little bit. And underneath the skull in that area near the feathers, I want it to be darker. And just before it starts to dry, I'm just going to kind of pull the edges a little bit on the top part just to blend them a little bit more. I want to dry brush khaki on this now. And I don't want a lot of paint on my brush. I want to layer it or just do it as it goes, but I know what I'm trying to say. I'm going to dry brush sandstone now, and I want it to be very, very light. I don't want hardly any any paint on my brush, if I can talk right. And because that dried in there weird and I kind of pulled it out on accident, I'm gonna have to go back with sepia and fill that back in. All right, now I'm gonna make an attempt to paint the logo on this, or the bird emblem on here. And I just kind of freehanded the pencil in, and now I'm just gonna fill it in with black. I'm gonna go ahead and dry brush just on the outside, hippo gray. I don't want a lot on there, so I'm just gonna be really easy on it. I want to make sure I don't get the spine or the quill part of it. Okay, now I'm going to start looping these ropes through these rings, maybe. Probably should have slanted these a tad more, but it is what it is. Just got to deal with it and make the best of it now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just apply some glue. So I'm just some PVA, and I want to put some sand on this in random places, mostly along the path, but I can't just put it on the path because if I just do that, it'll look odd. So I'm just going to kind of apply it randomly. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to dilute some burnt umber and paint the sand. I don't care if it's a total coverage. In other words, if I see some sand through it a little bit, that's fine. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to dry brush some golden brown on this, just to bring it up. I'm gonna do a couple layers of it. Well, not a couple layers, a couple different colors. I'll also probably end up doing sand. Oops, oh crap. Yeah, don't do that. Pay more attention, I guess. Don't be like me. Now, since this is the worn path, I do want this to be a little bit more addressed as far as this is concerned. I want it to be worn, for lack of a better explanation. Well, I won't bore you with this. Since there's a lot of it, I will do this, and then once we get to the next color, you shall see. I know this is one extra step, and you probably really don't need it, but I like to have multiple layers of color. So I'm going through and doing a khaki. I'm also concerned with where the sand is more prevalent, because I'm going to probably leave some of that a little bit bare and not have everything covered with grass. All right, now I'm going to do sandstone. If you've watched very many of my videos, you've probably determined that sandstone is one of my more favorite colors to work with when it comes to terrain. And I want to do this really light. I don't want to go crazy on this. I want to have it just be an accent. Have very little paint on my brush when I do it, and be very light-handed, and then just as the paint removes, maybe apply a little bit more pressure. But I do want this to be an area where it is a little bit more prevalent. It is now time to flock. This is just some PVA glue, and I have my mixture of flock that I use, and I need a bigger brush. That one just not gonna cut it. Oh, and this is parchment paper, by the way. And this is just kind of a mixture of flock that I have that is all the mixtures of all different types of things when stuff gets contaminated. It has static grass in it, it has clump foliage, it has reindeer moss, it has all kinds of different things in it. That way it doesn't go to waste. Alright, we need some PVA glue now and just do some of this flock. It's a medium super turf. And then the other one is a spring turf. So this one's lighter than the other is all. All right, this right here is this ditchweed. It's a light green ditchweed. And there's a couple clumps in back. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a bunch of tufts down. This is long buffalo grass, this is green, and then there's some brown, some light green, and then I have a whole slew of army painter buffalo grass. I'm just going to go through and do this and just start slapping stuff down everywhere. So the main takeaway from this is the banner and the feathers and just the composition of the piece overall, and that you can do it in multiple steps. That's basically what I'm trying to convey here. But this last step, even though it may be short in the video, painting the ropes and things like that took forever, and just things like that. I didn't cover a lot of the foliage because it was a lot of repetitiveness as far as clumps and things like that are concerned. A lot of army builder tufts and some other things. I didn't want to do long grass on this because I want to be able to see some of the things and kind of give the sense that it's well traveled and not always going to allow something to grow a lot, because they are visiting things here and there, even though there will always be persistent little pain in the butt shrubs that'll appear. But that was kind of the overall theme of this. It was a lot of fun to do, and I don't know if I'll do a project like this again, just because it's, well, that's not true. Who knows? Anyway, I'd like to thank the patrons, especially for all that they do for us and the communication behind the scenes. It's a lot of fun, and I enjoy it, and I so much appreciate the support for the channel and giving us that extra boost to move on and encouragement. I also appreciate those who leave comments. I appreciate those individuals as well, and it means a lot. And if you have any questions on this one, leave a comment, questions below. Very much appreciated. So that's a wrap on this week's tutorial. Like I said, if you have any questions, comments, give me a holler. I'll be more than happy to help you where I can. And hope you enjoyed this. And it'll be a nice centerpiece for whatever skirmish game or whatever we happen to play. But it's a lot of fun. And until next time, remember what my mother used to always say, that anyone can do art. Ciao. Have a good night. Hope your hobby's doing well. Hope everything's good for you. And later.